Good morning. I'm glad you all are back with us again this week as we continue our study in the book of Matthew. Now we have finished up the first 4 chapters, which were kind of the lead-in to the beginning of Jesus' ministry. In chapter 4 it says that Jesus then began his ministry preaching to repent because the kingdom of heaven is drawing near. Then in chapter 5, Jesus gives his kind of first major teaching, and sometimes referred to as the Sermon on the Mount. And he starts off with some instructions, and that's where we're going to begin today. So in Matthew chapter 5, beginning in verse 1, it says, "Seeing the crowds, he, Jesus, went up on the mountain, and when he sat down, his disciples came to him. And he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely for my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. You are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not an iota, not a dot will pass from the law until all is accomplished." So what we have here is Jesus is teaching the people. Now someone must have asked, are you changing the law? Or maybe Jesus could just see in their hearts that the people were wondering that question. Are you changing the law based on this teaching that you have given? Or are you changing the law? Because, Jesus didn't just out of the blue come up with this idea, do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. There must have been a reason that Jesus was making that statement. So in order to understand this idea of, has the law been changed? Has it not been changed for us today? We need to first figure out why the people were even asking this question. And in order to answer that, we need to look at a few things. And the first thing that we need to look at is what it means to be blessed or blessed. Blessed, makarios, is the Greek word that Jesus used, means to be happy or have a blessed, happy life or a happy way of life. Jesus said that if you want the blessed life, a life where blessings flow towards you as instead of away from you, then these are the things that you should do. And he outlines all those things that people should do. And those things that he outlined we call the beatitudes. But one of the things that I want you to notice is that the things that Jesus talked about are not all about having fun or having the good life in the sense that the world defines the good life. Having wealth, having fame, having fortune, having good health, etc. And to be honest with you, it's not just the world. Many so-called churches also define the blessed life as having wealth, having fame, having fortune, having good life, having good health, etc. But notice in Jesus' definition of the good life, verse 10 has his followers being persecuted for their stand for righteousness. Verse 11 has his followers being reviled, persecuted, and slandered for their stand for Jesus. You see, this is not the picture of how the world envisions having the blessed life. So Jesus is really not talking about these physical blessings. Jesus is talking about spiritually blessed life. Having the things that bring an inner peace and comfort even when life is chaotic and difficult. Now at this point you may be asking, what does this have to do with the law? I'm clicked on this to watch a video on the law. Well, let's examine why the people might wonder if Jesus was changing the law. How does the Hebrew text, the Old Testament, say that you get the blessed life? I mean, this is what the people would have understood since it was what they had been taught. Well, there is a similar word in the Hebrew scriptures for blessed, and it is barak, which means to be blessed or adored. To have a life that is beneficial, having the good life. So people would have understood that there was a way of having the life that Jesus was talking about, but how had they been told that you get that life? Well, we could look in the Hebrew text to see. In Deuteronomy chapter 8, beginning in verse 1, it says, "If you faithfully obey the voice of the Lord, being careful to do all his commandments that I command you today, the Lord your God will set you high above the nations of the earth, and all these blessings shall come upon you and overtake you. If you obey the voice of the Lord your God, blessed shall you be in the city, blessed shall you be in the field, blessed shall be the fruit of your womb, and the fruit of your ground, and the fruit of your cattle, the increase of your herds, and your herds, and the young of your flock. Blessed shall be your basket and your kneading bowl. Blessed shall you be when you come in, and blessed shall you be when you go out." So how did God say in Deuteronomy, you get the blessed life? Keep the law. He says, if you faithfully obey the voice of the Lord your God, being careful to do his commandments. You want the blessed life? Keep the law. Psalm 119, beginning in verse 1, it says, "Blessed are those whose way is blameless, who walk in the law of the Lord. Blessed are those who keep his testimonies, who seek him with all their whole heart, who also do no wrong, but walk in his ways." How do you have the blessed life according to Psalm? By keeping the law. It says, who walk in the way and the law of the Lord, who keep his testimonies, walk in his ways. That's how you have the blessed life. We can go over to Proverbs chapter 29, verse 18. It says, "Where there is no prophetic vision, the people cast off restraint. But blessed is he who keeps the law." And there you have it. You want to have the blessed life? Keep the law. You see why the people were wondering if Jesus was changing all of this? I mean, each one of them had been told, his or her whole life, that if you want the blessed life, then keep the law. Now Jesus comes along and he explains how to have the blessed life, and he gives instructions that are not found in the law, or at least not explicitly. Jesus says, you want to have that blessed life? In their mind, they're thinking, okay, this is going to be a teaching on the law. Then Jesus goes into this whole teaching on be poor in spirit. Allow yourselves to be put in positions where you will mourn. Be meek. Have a hunger for righteousness. Show mercy. Have a pure heart. Be a peacemaker. Allow yourself to be persecuted, reviled, and slandered for Jesus and his kingdom. Wow, this seems to be vastly different than you shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make idols. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. And all the other commandments that God gives scattered throughout the Hebrew text. And yet Jesus said he was not changing even an iota or a dot from the law. The iota and the dot are thought to have been the smallest marks in the Hebrew language. This is Jesus' way of saying he was not changing even the smallest points of the law. So folks, the first thing we need to see from this, Jesus did not change the law. Many today have this idea that Jesus did away with the law. But we can see here, in Jesus' own words, he did not. Now, he did say that he came to fulfill the law, but as we've talked about in a previous video, to fulfill the law was a rabbi phrase, meaning to explain the law correctly so that you can follow it correctly. Jesus said, I did not come to abolish the law, I came to fulfill it. I didn't come to do away with the law. I came to explain it correctly so that you can follow it correctly. These people listening to Jesus' teachings did not understand the law, and he was trying to explain to them the law. What he was doing was he was trying to explain the intent of the law. By being merciful, by hungering for righteousness, by being a peacemaker, by being pure in heart, and all the other beatitudes. Jesus is saying you're actually following the intent of the law. Those are the things that the Old Testament law is teaching. To view or to teach the law in any other way is to misunderstand or misinterpret, misrepresent the law. In other words, if you don't see mercy in God's law, then you don't understand God's law. If you don't see the admonishment to keep peace in God's law, then you don't understand God's law. If you don't see these things that Jesus was talking about in the Old Testament laws on slavery, then you don't understand the Old Testament laws on slavery. You know, there's so many, especially talking about slavery, that believe that the Old Testament slavery laws are evil. But that's because they don't understand what God was trying to do with these laws. Jesus said that the law is actually teaching the same thing that he was teaching his disciples that day. So folks, the law is still every bit in effect, as much as it ever was, or at least the intent of the law is. That's what God was trying to teach in the Old Testament, and Jesus is still trying to teach that in the New Testament. So if we're going to understand the rest of his teachings here on that Sermon on the Mount, we're going to need to delve into what Jesus is teaching about the law, explaining it correctly so that the people can follow it correctly. So that means we're going to need to look a little bit more in depth in Matthew chapter 5, beginning in verse 2, and see how these teachings, these beatitudes, really do teach the law. And we will do that next week. I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.